So welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to discuss petting or stroking birds of prey. It's quite a controversial subject. So a lot of people have asked us, why don't we stroke them? Why don't we touch them? Or can we stroke them? Can you touch them? Can you pet them? Can you kiss them? Essentially, yes, within reason. So there's a lot to dive into here. So we'll break it down point by point. We'll go through several birds and the reasons for or for not stroking and touching birds. So starting off, can you stroke a bird of prey? So I have Hoggle, who is our SMJ Falcon here. Yes, I can stroke him, I can touch him. Does he really like it? As you can see by his body language here, his feathers have gone in around his face and he started to tippy tap his toes. He's like, what are you doing? Okay. He doesn't really mind it, but he's not particularly happy with it. One of the ways that we do actually touch our birds is just on their front here, on their keel bone. So you've got their crop here, so you've got a big hole where their food goes just here. It's literally just where their food pops in and it'll bulge out once they've got a full crop and a full tummy. But just below that is the keel bone, just there. So we can actually touch just here, and we can feel how much muscle, how much fat is based around that. And then the other side of it, as our birds are getting fitter and fitter, especially our falcons, we like to feel just under the wings here, and then we can feel the muscles just under there, just to feel how fit and strong the bird is as the season progresses. The other most important side of it is their feet. So obviously with birds of prey, they have very strong, very sharp, very powerful feet. So we need to be able to touch those feet to inspect them for one reason. We also need to deal with their equipment around their feet, and basically most of the stuff around their feet, we don't want them to feel threatened and lash out and grab with their feet, because obviously it would hurt and cause quite a bit of damage, especially when you go into the bigger birds like the eagle owls and the eagles themselves. So with Hoggle here, we do need to check his feet. So we just lift just gently underneath the foot, and we can just have a little look under and see there. And then when it comes to cleaning, we'll use a toothbrush or a cotton pad and just brush off his feet and his toes there. And then make sure all the talons are intact and absolutely fine. And then when it comes to the anklets here that you go around the feet, we need to be able to move these around, put leather grease on those, and then also thread the jesses through when we find them and when we're taking them off, and all sorts of different reasons we need to play with their equipment around their feet. The other side of it is some of the birds have telemetry mounting systems either on their tail, so a tail mount for a transmitter to go on their tail, so we need to be able to touch their tail. And then we also need to be able to touch on their back if they have a backpack. So we just touch just about here. Now Hoggle doesn't have one, so he's not used to being touched on his back here. So they're the main reasons. We don't go ahead and we don't go like this, and we don't go like this. Hoggle is such a good boy, he doesn't really care, but as you can see, his whole body language here, he's like, get off, what are you doing to me, stop it, I don't really like it. That's him just telling me off. And you can see his whole body language, his feathers have gone really sleek, especially his little beard here hasn't popped out. And then the last thing that we do need to touch is, especially with Hoggle here, because you can see he's got a damaged sear, so he's essentially ripped out his nostril there at the base of his sear. There we go, bud. And we need to be able to clean that out and make sure there's no grime or anything there. It doesn't affect him at all. Essentially, if you damage the nail bed on your fingernails, it's the same principle as that for Hoggle. But we do need to clean their beaks off and look after their beaks as well. So quite a few different inspection checks that we need to do on a regular basis there. So part of stroking and touching the birds, you've got to think about it on an ethical basis. So basically, would the birds naturally do it? So certain species of the bird do actually naturally preen and sort of groom each other essentially. And that's quite a lot of owl species would do that. Falcons themselves, they don't do much mutual preening, not like parrots and parakeets and all the rest of those, which do that on a regular basis as a bonding thing. Falcons, it's all through food, so especially the male bringing food into the pair, and they will often sit next to each other side by side and things like that. But in terms of preening, they don't really do it. They might have a little nibble of each other occasionally, but they don't really preen the same principle of parrots and parakeets and things. So just like Hoggle, Willow here is a fully imprinted bird, so she's hand raised by myself, and she's very used to me being around her and touching her and prodding her around. So Willow does have a harness on her back for me to put a transmitter on. Now, one of the very important things with birds of prey, and one of the main reasons why we don't stroke them, is they actually preen special oils from their preen gland into their feathers. So when they're preening, they actually rub their beak at the base of their tail on their preen gland, and then rub the oils from their beak into their feathers. That helps with their waterproofing. Now, a lot of people do argue about the waterproofing and the oils on their feathers, and people stroking them, and literally people say that the stroking doesn't affect their waterproofing. Well, essentially it does, and you can actually prove it with birds that have a tail mount or a backpack where you're touching that point on their back. Now, that will actually rub off the oils, and the place that willow gets wet very quickly is actually on that part where I'm touching on a regular basis. And I've got some footage here of this happening, so you'll be able to see the proof behind the fact that stroking does, affect their waterproofing. So obviously for us, we have to fly our birds in the rain or the snow, so we want them to stay nice and dry and nice and waterproof. And obviously if they were to go back in their aviary wet, then that could be a health risk, especially during the winter months, the autumn and the winter months when it's colder. So a lot of understanding birds of prey and just birds in general is all down to their body language. So you need to be able to read and understand the bird. Obviously, you're not going to put your hand anywhere near a bird that wouldn't want to, because you're going to get hurt. So you need to be able to understand the bird. Now, obviously, I understand Willow very, very well, and her whole mannerisms and her body language here. So she's just quite playful here. She's not being nasty at all. If she wanted to really hurt me, then she would do. She's very used to my hands being around, and obviously very used to me touching where I need to touch for her own health, moving her feet around, and shift your feet over, big girl, and then touching her toes and all the rest of it. She's very used to that, especially with her backpack as well, which I mount on every time that we have to fly her. I put the transmitter just on her back, just touching just there. So it's all down to each bird, and as I say, how you understand and read them. So here we have probably the most common bird that people see stroked and being pulled around and messed around with. And in fact, there's quite a few awful videos circulating of really, really distressed owls being stroked, and even someone putting their owl's head in their mouth, and all sorts of just weird and stupid things. You basically animal abuse reviews on the internet, which is just awful. And it's really, really something that we want to educate people and show people what is right and what is wrong. So little Twilight the barn owl. So Twilight I've had since she was literally about 3 weeks old. So she's very used to me. But there's certain things that she will and will not tolerate. So with owls, they can't see very well up close. So one of the things that you will see owls do is they will nibble and feel around with their beak. And this is part of the natural preening and grooming of each other. Is when they're sat side by side, they will sometimes just nibble around each other's wings and faces and stuff like that. And you can see not really that bothered about that, but then again, it's down to us training and working with her over quite a number of years. Now, one of the things I do show with Twilight, I don't stroke her because obviously she's got such sensitive feathers and things like that, but I will show just how small she is underneath all these feathers. So at this point, as I say, I'm not stroking the feathers, I'm literally just pulling them back just to show off how small her face actually is underneath all these feathers. And then the other side of it, she will actually let me touch her facial disc, so around her beak here, and then she's just closing her eyes purely because she doesn't want to get stabbed in the eye. And then around her facial disc, then I'll separate her feathers to show off her ear hole, and she's very used to me doing this. But as I say, we don't sit there and just stroke her like this. It's obviously not very good for her. And she's basically just a big ball of feathers. So if you get rid of the oils on their feathers, she would literally just soak up any moisture and any water if she was out in the rain, and it would be very, very detrimental to her flying ability. The other side of it is touching her feet. This is something she started to be a bit silly with. As you can see here, she's nibbling me a bit, but when we take her out and fly her, we change her jesses over and we'll put a transmitter on there. And as you can see here, she's telling me off, and she is starting to properly bite me and tell me off. So it's something she's developed over the recent years, where she doesn't really like her feet being played with and touched. She'll tolerate it for a bit, but as you can see, there's a whole difference with how she's behaving now to how she was before. Yes, but she will let me do it, but after a little bit she's like, get off, leave me alone, basically. So they are all individuals, and as I say, we do have other barn owls here, and they're all very individual, and they like certain things or dislike certain things as well. So now we switched to JD, who is our male barn owl. Now, he was not hand raised by us, he was actually given to us. He used to be an older gentleman's aviary bird, so he did no external work, didn't literally leave the aviary or do any flying. So it's a very hard task to get a bird like this going to any extent. But he is really, really particular. You can already see his body language is very, very different to Twilight's. He doesn't appreciate just sitting on the glove like this. He prefers to go out, get flown, get some food, and go back in his house. That's basically what he's about. But he will let us put the transmitter on his leg. But in terms of getting near him or stroking him, literally, if I touch him here, he literally will freak out. And it's not something that I want to do. I don't want to stress him out or worry him in any way, but you can already see whole body language is very, very different to Twilight. He doesn't talk to us, he doesn't squeak at us, he's just very standoffish, and he's very particular about how he's handled and how he's worked with. So I say every single bird is very individual. It depends on how they're raised and even their own individual personalities as well. So now I've got a few molted feathers from some of our birds. So we've got some feathers from our raven just here, and then a few falcon feathers from last molt as well. So I've also got a pot of water, just to demonstrate the waterproofing on their feathers. So with the millie feathers here, literally, if I just show this off, very, very shiny, very beautiful feather. And then if I just give it a little dip in the water there, you can just see how that's beaded up, and literally dunk it, and you can see there. So literally no tricks, dunk the feather, and there's some beading on there. They're not fully, they're water resistant with the oils. And then look at that, very beautiful how it just shakes off, and then you can start to see it started to soak in, and the feathers getting a little bit heavier as well. Whereas if I get this one here and then I stroke it a few times, you can see the difference this makes to just the look of the feather. If I dunk this in, you can already see how wet that feather has become just from simply dunking it in just a couple of times. Hold it in just like that, and then you can see it's just saturated. So that was literally just a couple of strokes on that feather, and you can just see how much of an impact that had on the waterproofing of the feathers. Now, every single bird's feathers are different structures and different shapes and different waterproofing levels, but they all are fairly water resistant. I don't know how old some of these feathers are, to be fair, how long they've actually just been sat in the box. But you can just see the beading on there, and if I shake that off and then stroke this feather again, actually just a few times with my bare hands, and then look at the difference of that. So that's the main reason why we don't stroke our birds, is the waterproofing, and then obviously for the birds, they don't really like it, so we don't do it. It's the main thing for us. So when it comes to handling the birds, and we allowing public to handle the birds when we're out and about at static and flying displays and things, we do have a few safety measures in place. You will often see people at car parks and shopping centres with birds, and people are surrounding the birds and stroking them and touching them. It's really not on. And a lot of these places, they're actually posted up for free, so as such, the way they're actually getting money is people are paying £5, £10, whatever amount, for people to actually hold the birds and stroke the birds whilst handling them, which is, and also paying for photos as well. So it's not really something that we approve of or even think that is a good thing to do. When we do our static shows, we have specific 4-foot fencing, nice barrier between them and the public, so we've got a nice safe place. We also have nice big marquees for the birds, so shelter from sun, and we will do a proper dedicated video on our setup for shows. And then we will do handling at certain events where we can control the flow of people, as well as we assure like dogs and things are well away, and events like that. Most of our events, we just have the birds out on a static display, well displayed, perfectly happy, comfortable birds, and then we'll take them out and fly them, and they'll just literally know that they're there for a bit, they get flown, they get fed, and then they get to relax and chill out. So most of the time we don't do handling and things like that, so it's a little bit different for us, and certainly a better way to handle the birds. So this wraps up that video. So if you like that video, then do let us know down in the comments. And it's certainly a touchy subject and something that we thought we need to educate people on, why we don't touch and handle our birds. So hope everyone's enjoyed that one for us.